The new NetherRealm Studios game is out in the form of Mortal Kombat 1 for some reason. Not Injustice 3 or even Mortal Kombat 12, it's MK1. I guess since the Fire God Liu Kang recreated the universe from the beginning, they decided to just call it MK1. But nevertheless, we do have the old usual in terms of returning characters: Sub-Zero, Scorpion, Raiden, Liu Kang, Katana Melina. But we even have some returning favorites such as Li Mei or Ashrah from the PS2 era games, and even Geras from MK11 returns because we really wanted Geras to be back. This game introduces some new single-player modes, and by modes I mean just one, which is Invasions, which is designed to replace the Crypt. We'll get into that a little later. Then we have the story mode, the classic towers, as well as practice, online, the usual verses, and customized options. Pretty standard stuff. We'll start off with the story mode. Following the events of Mortal Kombat 11, Liu Kang defeated Kronika to gain control of the Hourglass, and then Shang Tsung was also defeated by Liu Kang. I believe that was a part of the Aftermath expansion. But either way, Liu Kang has rebirthed a universe, but he wants the mortals to decide what happens to them. And in the beginning of the game, we see Shang Tsung basically turning to a salesman, and then Kronika shows up and says, or at least it's like a de facto Kronika. And she tells Shang Tsung, I can give you unrivaled power. And then we see that Raiden and Kung Lao are living in this village and that they're living very peacefully. Raiden and Liu Kang have basically swapped places, Raiden no longer being an elder god. And then when they're in this tea house, Scorpion and Sub-Zero invade, and you have to brawl them and stuff like that. And you're thinking, well, God, the Lin Kuei are invading. At this time, I believe Scorpion and Sub-Zero are actually brothers, and they're not just like bitter rivals. But actually not, because the Sub-Zero isn't actually the original Sub-Zero. But this is where you might be introduced to the combat of Mortal Kombat 11. And we'll get into a little bit of the gameplay later. But this new combat system is very, very interesting. You did get rewards after completing each chapter of the story mode. But it's revealed it was all just an elaborate ruse. Liu Kang wanted Sub-Zero and Scorpion to prove that they were strong enough to become the new defenders of Earthrealm from the Outworld, who apparently is even with the Earthrealm in this game. So then we are introduced to Johnny Cage, who is yet again another A-lister movie star. And this time he's basically starring in what is Indiana Jones. And then Johnny Cage has to fight off these ancient demons to protect the sealed away treasures, but it's actually just a movie set. Johnny Cage isn't actually fighting these dudes. And then it's revealed that Johnny Cage is actually losing a ton of money, and he's trying to make sure that this movie franchise revitalizes his career. But he also has Sento, which is a $3 million sword that Kenchi's family used to own, and Kenchi wants it back so he can defend his family's name until Johnny Cage goes to the door and sees Liu Kang, and Liu Kang is like, hello, we need you to defend the Earthrealm. We need a big, strong team to defend the Earthrealm in the Mortal Kombat tournament. It's basically Raiden going around trying to select all the warriors. But eventually the story mode does introduce some new gameplay stuff like Test Your Might, which I don't remember ever being in the story mode previously, but it could have been. And you just have to punch a door 3 times in a row. It's quite humorous if you fail this because it looks like Baraka is just extremely weak. And apparently Baraka was originally a Denian, but he contracted this disease known as Tarkat. And also in the story mode, we do see some returning characters such as Ermac, and then Chameleon shows up in Edenia. But of course, you cannot play as these characters. But I do love the idea of taking some of the older, like PS2 era characters and revitalizing them and giving them a new facelift and implementing them into the world of Mortal Kombat. But also another very impressive thing about the animations for story mode is the facial animations. The voice acting is great except for Megan Fox as Natara. But the motion capture, the facial animations, all of it's really good. And plus this engine that Mortal Kombat uses for its graphics, I'm not sure if it's the same engine as the older games. I assume it may be. But it's just incredible to look at. The story mode is beautifully animated. But it does lead a little bit to be desired because you kind of feel like it has that typical lazy Mortal Kombat writing. So then we get into Invasions, which is a game mode that's designed to replace the Crypt, and we have some references to the classic Mortal Kombat games, such as the Blood Code for the Genesis, Look to La Luna, which was the reptile condition in the first Mortal Kombat game. Basically, this is like a board game. You go and walk to a node, and then you have to fight some dudes. Occasionally, there will be like this whole survive minigame, And there are different locations as well. I believe there's like 6 different realms you can visit. But for the most part, in all the realms, you just walk across these nodes, fighting a bunch of dudes. And a lot of times they will have armor and even super armor. And you can level up your characters. You can earn experience points as you begin winning fights, etc. You can increase the amount of health you have, how much damage attacks do. You can lessen the amount of damage attacks will do on chip, which means you block them. So you can also change your cameo and your character at any time. There's no incentive to sticking to the same character because there's a shared progression amongst everybody. You can make some ridiculously overpowered characters in this game too. You can have some characters have like an uppercut that does like 75% damage. But my biggest takeaway from Invasions is that it just feels kind of monotonous to a certain point. It's really fun for maybe the first hour or two because you're fighting all these really overpowered, super armored enemies, and then you realize you just have to keep doing this over and over. You can unlock consumables that will give you buffs, such as increasing the amount of damage your uppercut will do, but for the most part, you just fight super armored enemies over and over and over. And the biggest incentive to playing Invasions is leveling up your characters through mastery or the cameo mastery. And you also do earn some items such as coins, crowns, and seasonal currency. This game has 4 different types of currencies, but the crowns are used exclusively in Invasions to buy the buffs and the talismans and stuff. But you don't necessarily have to go through Invasions to level up your characters. You could also do it through the towers. And occasionally, you will unlock a lot of extra stuff, such as skins, because these portals will just randomly show up on the map. But Invasions is just very monotonous. Over time, it just becomes annoying. It's not necessarily fun anymore. And they do try to change up the gameplay because it's like, okay, you're going to do test your might now, or you're going to do this endurance round where you have to fight these 3 dudes back to back to back. But it just gets to the point where you get kind of burnt out on it. And I know what you're saying. This is a fighting game. You fight dudes all the time. What's the problem? But in Invasions mode, all of these enemies have armor and super armor, and they've got these really big buffs. And you're basically fighting them back to back to back to back to back to back. And there's not a lot of diversity, but of course you can level up your character. You can increase their attack. You can make them so overpowered, as I said earlier, to the point where like a basic combo will do 75% damage. And I guess that is the fun of it. But the only real reason why you would play Invasions is just to unlock stuff. That's about it. I mean, you can level up a character a lot and even earn new skins, new palettes, etc. But for the most part, Invasions is just kind of annoying and monotonous. And it gets to the point where you're just playing it just to see it through to the end, and you're not playing it because you genuinely want to. But I mean, it is a good place to learn some combos, I guess, if you don't want to go to practice or towers or any of the other game modes that are more interesting in this game. I don't know. I guess I just missed the crypt instead of this Invasions game mode. And also, this is a single player mode, but you have to be connected to the internet. So getting into crowns, crowns are currencies that are exclusive to the Invasions mode. And you can buy talismans, which are like little buffs, like little power-ups you can get from the collector. You can also sell some goods that you no longer need. But crowns are useless outside of Invasions. And here's a good example of Johnny Cage having a ton of armor and even being able to disable throws, which I thought was really, really interesting. And then he low-blowed me. That's very fun. Sometimes in this game you'll have to complete certain towers to get a certain item that you need for progression. But, as I said, it's very monotonous. It's linear too, and there's not much you can really do outside of just fighting a bunch of enemies. It's just, you fight the same 4 or 5 enemies over and over, and the AI isn't great. Like, Invasions was quite easy. If some of the enemies were challenging and actually provided some different, I guess, play styles per se, it might make it interesting. But it's kind of like the same complaint I had about the World Tour and Street Fighter. It just wasn't interesting enough for me to continuously keep playing it. Once I got all the skins, I just said whatever. But eventually, after playing through all 6 of the realms, or however many there were, I believe it's about 6, you fight the big final boss, which is Scorpion, and you do unlock that skin, and it's really cool, but it's a shame that the boss was more or less a super armored enemy that has 3 different phases and takes forever. Mortal Kombat mainstay Towers also returns, and this is like an arcade mode. You pick a character and then you fight through a certain number of enemies. There's Novice, Warrior, and Champion, which basically just changes the amount of enemies that you have to fight. But there's also an endless mode, which means you just keep fighting until you die. And then there's a survivor mode, which requires you to fight 25 enemies, I believe with a single health bar. It does refill though, if I'm not mistaken. But obviously the big thing about playing through Towers is the character endings. The final boss is Shang Tsung and Quan Chi, who are also the final bosses of the story mode too. And when you defeat them, you get to watch this big giant cutscene about you and your cameo, uppercutting them off into this big giant well. And then when it's all said and done, you do get to watch the character endings, which are canon in this game. It basically just tells you, after the events of the story mode, this character went and did this. But I think it's really interesting because they're all canon in this game. So if you really want to know what happened to one character after the events of the story, you can go and watch their character endings. After the end of a tower, you get a result screen as well as getting a bunch of coins and stuff that you can use. There are 4 different types of currency in this game, as I said earlier. We've already discussed crowns, but there are coins which are earned by playing through invasions, story mode, and even the towers mode. These coins can be spent at the shrine, and you can unlock palettes, concept art, and even skins for characters in some instances, as I unlocked the Dark Sindel skin, the Order of Darkness palette for her, which does give her that skin. And of course, you can customize characters in this game. It's been a big part of Mortal Kombat basically since Mortal Kombat X, where you can unlock new skins, new palettes, new items, such as unlocking different types of masks for the characters or different types of swords. If you're Kenshi, for example, you can unlock different types of masks for Scorpion to wear. Some of these are earned through the shrine, some of these are earned through invasions, like leveling up the characters, and some of these are earned through playing through the story mode. But most of these come from either invasions or shrines, but I believe you can use the shrine to unlock basically any item in the game. So you can change the skin that Sindel has or even what crown that she decides to wear on her head. And you can even customize the cameos, but the cameos are more restrictive than the actual characters because you're not really going to see the cameos that much. But unlocking the MK3 skin for Sonya is always really cool because that's my favorite Sonya design. But some of these also come from the seasonal store, which uses a currency called seasonal currency. And by going into the seasonal store, you can unlock different skins, different items. And these can also be earned through the shrine, but you can just buy them with seasonal currency instead. One of my complaints about the seasonal items is that the palettes are quite ugly because every outfit, regardless of the character, is like yellow, brown, or red. But there's also the premium store, which uses a currency called dragon crystals, which have to be bought with real money. It's a microtransaction currency. I did earn the Dark Sindel skin through the shrine, so I didn't have to pay for it. But it just feels like, what's the point? The seasonal currency you have to earn through gameplay, and you can use the seasonal currency to buy these skins and even enhancements, or I guess just gear for the characters. But the dragon crystals must be bought with real money, which I think is really, really weird. And of course, you know they're going to sell the skins that you actually want. Some of the items do recycle. The timer doesn't work yet, apparently, according to NetherRealm. But you want this Deadly Alliance Scorpion skin? You got to pay real money for it, sorry. You can earn some dragon crystals by like leveling up like 60, 70 levels. Like once you get to level 60, 70, 80, you earn some and then you earn like 500 by playing through the story. But you know down the road they're going to sell even more skins. And I just think it's kind of a waste. You could have just had those skins in the game to begin with. But some of these items I've heard can be earned through the shrine, some of the premium items. But for the most part, you'll just earn concept art. You might earn a new skin for a character, some new gear. We went over this before. But the Dragon Crystals thing just isn't that cool. That's one of my biggest complaints about this game. But you do have a collection, which is also in the extras menu. And you can view the concept art that you've unlocked, the character endings you've unlocked, the music, stuff like that. And this has been in Mortal Kombat games before, but it is really nice just to look through the different types of artwork and maybe listen to some of the stage music. But you will unlock most of these through the shrines. In order to get all the endings, you just have to play through the tower with every character. Really, the only one I have is like Li Mei, because that's the only character that I've really played. So, This isn't necessarily a review of the competitive side of Mortal Kombat. I probably will make another video about that later, in which I discuss the mechanics and just my overall thoughts on them. For now, this is just me talking about the game as it is and the different types of game modes. You do have the usual online mode, which is basically just versus, but with an actual human player over the internet. But as Mortal Kombat 1 stands now, there's not much in terms of game modes. I mean, obviously I'm interested in the competitive side of fighting games, so I'm going to be playing through the practice and fighting probably thousands of matches against the computer over the course of time. But if you are only interested in the casual side of Mortal Kombat, outside of story, you really just have invasions and then the towers. So the invasions does repeat through the seasons, or rather refresh. So there will be new stuff like every 50 days or however long the seasons will last. But there's not much in terms of game modes outside of towers, of course. So if you're looking just for like a casual game, Mortal Kombat 1 is probably going to be better if it's a little cheaper. But as I said, for me personally, I'm interested in the competitive side, so I'm going to be playing through this game a lot. I do think Mortal Kombat 1 is a better game than Mortal Kombat 11. I immediately enjoyed this game a lot more day one than I did Mortal Kombat 11. And I think the cameo system is really interesting and does give even more combo potential. But I'm just stuck with Sonya for now. Sonya's like the only cameo that I've used. And I understand that some of the better teams are like Cyrax, Baraka, like Kenshi Frost, stuff like that, Jax Kung Lao. Even Raiden is really good in this game, so I'm going to have to experiment with that. But as it stands for now, Mortal Kombat 1 is a really, really solid fighting game. Competitively, I think it's very interesting. I'll have to mess with it a little bit more. But casually, this game is probably like an 8 out of 10. Like, there's not much. But as I said, I'm a huge fighting game fan, so competitive stuff does interest me a lot. We do have some DLC characters coming out in the next couple of months. We have Homelander, Omni-Man, Peacemaker, Takeda, who was one of my favorite characters in Mortal Kombat X, and even Quan Chi. So I will be discussing those DLC characters when they come out. So we're going to have to see how the game changes over the course of the next few months. So I'm excited to see it.